Well, if you can't see him in the night, he at least has a light. Here's your look at the Playmates toys Godzilla x Kong The New Empire Mega Heat Ray Godzilla. Godzilla and Kong return in an all-new adventure, pitting the almighty Kong and the fearsome Godzilla against a colossal, undiscovered threat hidden within our world, challenging their very existence and our own. I think before Godzilla starts breathing down buildings with a case of bad breath, I'm going to grab the tape measure and I'm going to tell you how big the Godzilla x Kong The New Empire Misting Heat Ray Godzilla actually stands. While I'm doing this as well, I'd like to thank the folks over at Playmates that kindly provided this sample we could have a look at. Godzilla is quite large. How large, in fact? The figure is going to stand about 12.5 inches in height. Our Misting Godzilla is about 32 centimeters tall. So what does make the King of the Monsters mist, you may ask? Well, first, the figure does come included with an instruction sheet. I would always recommend first going through the instructions so you get a good idea, a lay of the land, exactly what you have to do. One thing you don't have to do right away is installing the batteries. Playmates have already taken the liberty of doing that for you. Though the time does come that you have to change them, you'll be required to change out 3 AAA batteries that go in the undergullet of his belly. We're going to talk more about that. Also, as well, it shows you how to fill up the water because it does come included with a dropper. It's just a case of filling up a cup with water. Now, I've already taken the liberty of filling the dropper with enough water to at least show you how this guy does mist. It shows you how, as well, to install that. Don't worry. It'll all be things I'll be showing you guys here in a second. And the figure does also come included with a replacement foam sponge. Keeping that off to the side. So as already mentioned, the thing that it comes included with is a dropper. It doesn't have water. I will say that right away. I had to take the liberty of filling this up first with cold water. I think cold water is probably the best thing, as that's the thing that mists the best. I've tried this actually with warmer water as well, and I didn't get as good of a result. So I would say right away, cold water is the best option for you. Fill this up with a little bit of water. Now I fill this all the way, but I've kind of been admittingly playing around with Godzilla in between takes. So this is what's left of the water. That's more than enough to show you guys how exactly this guy mists. The figure, like I said, does also come included with a sponge piece. Now the sponge is something that's going to go actually in the top of his head. There is already one installed in the top of his head, but this gives you a replacement. Yeah, I know. There's a lot to kind of cover off. Something else to cover off is that when you get this guy the packaging, some assembly is required. Godzilla's back tail is actually a separate piece from the front half of his body. When you get it out of the packaging, it's almost like I'm separating a lobster. This back softer rubbery tail has to be installed to the larger ball joint. It's really easy. In fact, you don't even have to heat this up at all. Just twist a little bit and then the tail attaches very securely on the back of Godzilla's body. By the way, the batteries, as I've already mentioned, if you look to the bottom of here, his underbelly right here, you can see there's 2 screws. You'll have to unscrew both of those, take the plate off, install back in your 3 AAA batteries. Playmates have already done that for you. I mean, most of the toys generally, when it comes to things like this, are obviously there as well, so the kids get the chance to play them in stores, or adults get the chance to try these also in stores. You will go get the lights and sounds. The thing you won't get, obviously, is the misting effect. Now, Godzilla lights up only here and here. He basically will charge up across the platelets of his body. Obviously, the back of his body, though, is only colored in pink. So the back of his tail and the front crest area around his head, those are the only things that are going to look a little out of place when you compare it to the clear, like the translucent pink that they use for the majority of his scales. It does have some articulation. Now, the legs themselves move forward and back. I know normally we would have looked at the articulation a little bit later, but the legs themselves move forward and back. You can't really separate them out, so Godzilla will only really have the means to move forward and back. His arms will also be something that moves freely forward and back. You can also move them out as well. And if you would really want to consider this articulation, I would certainly consider this articulation. The tail does also freely move up and down and back and forth as well. With the way that they've obviously posed him too, like you can only really have Godzilla in one sort of stance. If you look at the way his feet are, they're arched in such a way that Godzilla works really the best if he's upright like this. Now, obviously, you guys will want to see how exactly the lights and the sounds work. You don't have to even really fill it up with water if you're worried that mist is going to get everywhere. First of all, the mist isn't as grand, perhaps, as you may think. It's not going to be covering everything with water. It gets just enough of it so you can really see how cool this thing actually does look. Now, if you wanted to, you don't have to add the water right away. Oh, no. He will still light up. He still will make the audio clips with or without the water. But if you want to see what the water looks like, let's go ahead So we're going to pick up Godzilla here, and if you look at the top of his head, which I don't want to take too much really away from the actual sculpting of the head. I know we're going to rush right away to looking at the mist effect, but the head sculpt looks good. You can see he does have a pink eye there, or actually pink on both of his eyes. Top and bottom of his teeth are nicely painted there as well. They've even painted in the tongue. Now this is something that doesn't have technically articulation. This mouth will open the moment you start to press this button. Nice coloring overall of the blue, and you've got the pink. Whether you like the look of pink with Godzilla or not, I think the color of the two colors work really well with this release. Now, if we look at the bottom, he does have a little bit of airbrushing, so they've lightly colored the underbelly of his body. They've also undercolored the areas of his arms and the undersections of his legs as well. So some nice two-tones effects. A little hollow on the bottoms of his feet, but that's not really going to be the place you're going to be seeing anyways. But if you guys want to see how this works, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the top crest piece off, and you just separate it. That's easy. I mean, all you can see is basically there's two pegs at the back, a larger peg in the front, and that's going to plug in here, here, and here. Now that extra sponge, how this works, this sponge you twist. So if you twist it up, so if you look at it, it kind of looks like it's got, well, I'm going to bring in the other sponge so you guys can see. Put Godzilla here down for a second. See how the sponge has a lip. See how this is a little higher of a lip than the bottom here? This is the part that when you turn this, you want to make sure that this is turned up, and then that's the way to remove the sponge. It will tell you that over time the sponge will start to break down. I wonder if there's probably a way that you could even start to shape your own sponges and just fit them inside that way. What you'll do, though, is that the sponge basically will be pulled out the top, just like that. Now, this is already wet because I've been filling this with water, but when it comes time, you'll probably start to see that maybe the misting won't work as well over time, and that'll probably be the indication to you that you need to change the sponge. The sponge will be the thing that basically holds the moisture, and then the mist basically will be blown through the sponge. When you plug it back in place, you slot it in like this, and then you twist and you turn it down, and that locks it in. You may already be able to see this as well, that when you put the sponge through, it covers over the open canal area. That's going to be the part that you take the water. The water you basically will just put into the top of Godzilla's head, and you just squirt it down. Now, it'll go only to a point where after a while you'll probably see there's a little bit of water that kind of shot out the sides. That will be the best time to know that you filled enough with water that, Godzilla is now full and ready to start misting. Put the head obviously back in place. You want to make sure that that's completely covered. And then to cycle through the light ups, the audio clips, and misting is all done here by triggering the side button on the side of his body. There's no other button located here on Godzilla, so you'll know right away. There are a few little areas, like looking at this, that I thought this must be a secondary button, but I think that was maybe used for an earlier Godzilla release. So even though this is really technically here, it doesn't serve a purpose. You can't press this in. All the magic will be done here by pressing the side of his button. So if I just put this down here for a second, I'm going to press this button. And you can see his mouth lights up, but then this also, you can see, and there's the mist. I don't know if you guys can actually see the mist or not. It's only just a little bit. It works certainly better in the dark. I'll be cutting the lights in the studio in a second so you guys can see, but again, we're going to press the button here on the side. Again, the eyes will light up, the mouth will light up, and then you'll see, it'll go in sequence. The scales will all light up leading up to the front of his face. Can you see that mist okay? Maybe what we'll do is we'll cut the lights, we'll try it again so you guys can see what this looks like in the dark. And with the lights now cut off, what we're going to do is we're going to press this button again. And I find it's actually a little easier to see the mist just because now it's in the dark. The lights inside the mouth will be the thing that illuminates the mist. We'll just press it one more time. We'll just bring this a little bit closer. Now that's the better way to actually see this. Let's press this one more time while we're in the dark. Really, really cool. What I do also like about Godzilla is that it's more of a mist than it is a spray. When you do press the button again, and you put your hand against it, you can feel a cool moisture hitting your skin, but your skin doesn't get wet. Because it's also using only tap water, it's a safe mist too. It's something that you can have around your kids and you don't have to worry about it. It's not something that's sold specifically for Godzilla where you have to order more of it online. It's just, again, simple tap water. Even if Godzilla was only just using the sound clips and then the light up effects up his scales, I think alone that would be the price of admission. But I think it's a fun touch though that Playmates also added a misting effect to the front of Godzilla. Not only does it look cool when he's misting, but the fact that also the inside of his mouth illuminates the mist, it looks even better in the dark. Out of the packaging, Mega Heat Ray Godzilla has everything that you need if you just want the lights and the sounds. The only thing that you really have to do on your part is install the tail, but because the required 3 AAA batteries were already included by Playmates, if you just want the lights and the sounds and want to do away with the mist altogether, simply you can just use it without the water. Generally, though, I don't like to have water sitting inside my toys. I mean, obviously, with a case like this, I had to see what it looked like. And admittingly, it is pretty cool to see Godzilla misting like this. But at the end of this review, I'm going to take the top of his head out. I'm going to remove the sponge. I'm just going to let this guy dry out naturally. That way, I'm not going to have any extra water sitting inside. One thing I will say, though, with the dropper and the additional sponge, just put it inside of a bag, because those are 2 things that you're going to need. Maybe not so much the dabber, the dropper. The dropper, you can probably just easily get any other eyedropper to install the water in the top of Godzilla's noggin like this, but you want to make sure you hold on to the extra sponge. The sponge is really the thing that's holding the water in place, and it's basically blasting air straight through that. Once that starts to break down, you may start to see that maybe the misting isn't working as well as it did before. That's probably your sign to know that you're going to have to change the sponge attachment. So make sure you keep that out of the packaging when you're putting this guy together. Yeah, even though you don't really necessarily need the mist, you have to agree, though, the mist effect does add a little bit of appeal to the character. He's large in size. One thing, though, I didn't mention, though, in this review for his articulation is that he does swivel in the ankles as well. I was probably so quick to get right to the misting, I failed to mention that. But really a neat release. If you're a big fan of Godzilla, specifically from Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire, and you want to light up Godzilla does a little bit more, you may want to try to track down the Mega Heat Ray Godzilla from the folks over at Playmates. Speaking of which, though, I'd like to thank the folks over at Playmates that did provide this sample we could have a look at. What do you guys think of Godzilla? Let me know down below in the comments section. Would you be also one that'd be interested to get one for yourself? And are you a big fan of Godzilla and the Godzilla X Kong film series? Because so far we have 2. As far as I know, the studio's already planning to churn out a couple more sequels after that. If you guys did enjoy this video, do it a solid. Throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Hit that subscribe, turn on that bell, and of course the biggest thing is that you're coming back. We may be wrapping up things right now for the King of the Monsters, but this is, after all, Godzilla X Kong. I'm sure we will be getting an appearance from Kong in an upcoming video, so make sure you're coming back for that. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.